going to compare 7 or 8, 9 different cams with dyno charts, and we'll even show you the best overall for horsepower and torque. We'll show you the best for horsepower, and we'll show you the best for torque. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Steve Carr.
What's happening?
I get phone calls and emails all the time asking me about cams. What's the best cam for an M8? What's the best cam for a twin cam 88? All that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd put together a video today to go over what I have in my head. Hopefully it'll help you see through the clutter of the cams that are out there and what one does and what another one doesn't do, and how the factory produces engines, not just Harley-Davidson, but any factory, Briggs & Stratton, all the way to Ferrari. I don't claim to know everything. I'm not an engineer. I don't design engines. This is just basically common knowledge that a lot of people may not know they know, but once we get through this, you should know it, and it'll help you make a decision and work through some of the magic that people build for themselves in their head as to what you may or may not get when you do a cam job, stage 1, stage 2, those type things. So if you want to hang in there, I'd love to have you. This is going to be kind of a long video. I'm going to try to go into as much detail as I can. We're even going to have a cam comparison about the second half of the video. We're going to compare 7 or 8, 9 different cams with dyno charts, and we'll even show you the best overall for horsepower and torque. We'll show you the best for horsepower, and we'll show you the best for torque. You can't have both, the best of both worlds. You can only have sort of middle ground for both. So hang in there, we'll get started. All right, first off, you can't really start talking about cams until you understand how the factory designed these engines and what to expect from a cam. So let's start out talking about manufacturers' engines and the way they're designed and what you can expect from your stock engine. All right, let's do a hypothetical. Let's say factory A creates an engine that's going to have 100 horsepower and 100 foot-pounds of torque, and that's the way the engineers designed it. The factories and the way they are, they're not going to give you that 100 horsepower. They're going to knock it down about 10%, and a couple of different reasons. Reliability reasons. They don't want to have to deal with warranty problems giving the motor to a customer that's already peaked out. They're going to fuel mileage, EPA, all kind of reasons. So it's going to be about 10% detuned when it's delivered to the customer. You can now see the obvious reasons for that. They're not going to give you everything. So with that being said, of that 100 horsepower hypothetical engine, you can probably expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 horsepower, 90 foot-pounds of torque. That's the way you'll get it when it comes out of the crate and you take it home the first day. Now, these are not exact numbers. It's just an idea to get across to you. So the first thing that most people want to do is they want to do a stage 1. They want the bike to run a little better. Stage 1 is basically a tuner, a header, and a breather. It will generally yield about a 10% increase in both horsepower and torque, generally speaking. So 10% from where you got it from at 90 is going to put you back with a stage 1 where the factory originally designed that engine and the horsepower and torque for it to produce. That's what a stage 1 does generally speaking. So now you're back to where the factory designed the engine before the tune, hypothetically. You're back to 100 horsepower, 100 foot-pounds of torque on our hypothetical engine. So you ride it for a while, you're not happy, and now you want to put a cam in it. You want some more power. So that would be considered a stage 2. So with a stage 2, you can gain a little bit more. There's an old saying, you can't put more than a gallon of water in a gallon jug. Let me explain what I mean by that as it relates to an engine. You can only get so much fuel and air in the combustion chamber of that stock engine. So the next step is a stage 2. A stage 2 is the addition of a cam. And there are a ton of choices for cams for the M8, ton of choices for cams on the twin cam engine. All depends on where you want your power to come in. You want it to come in at the mid-range, or you want it to come at the high end of the RPM range. All right, generally speaking, a cam or stage 2 will yield about a 20% gain over your stock numbers. Remember when we started this hypothetical engine, it had 90 horsepower and 90 foot-pounds of torque. So generally speaking, 20% would put you somewhere in the 110 horsepower, 110 foot-pounds of torque. Again, hypothetical engine, hypothetical numbers, but this is the general rule for a stage 1 and a stage 2. Okay, of course, there's exceptions to every rule. Like you could put larger injectors in the bike. You could put a different intake manifold, a larger intake manifold on it. You could put a larger throttle body on the bike. You could have it dyno tuned. There's a whole bunch of different things you could try to do to increase that, quote, 20%, unquote, margin. But you can still only put a gallon of water in a gallon jug. Which leads us to the next thing, big bore kits. That's a whole nother subject and a whole nother rabbit hole to go down into. So now let's talk about cams. Let's see where this rabbit hole can take us. Okay, what you see here is a graph of about 13 different cams. All of the dyno runs were laid on top of one another. This was a 117 M8 engine with the same components on it. The bike had a 2-into-1 header, a 55 millimeter intake, 5.5 injectors, a high flow air cleaner, and a Power Vision tuner was used for these dyno runs. These charts are available on the FuelMoto website if you're interested. In front of you is a list of all the cams that were used in this test. The Woods cam, fueling cam, the Redshift cam from Zippers, Andrews, the Star cam, competition cam, Cyclorama, S&S. They're all here. Okay, so the first one is the Woods 22XD. The Woods 22XD produced 127 horsepower, 134 foot-pounds of torque. You can pause the video at any time to read the specs if you like. Now, this chart shows the Woods 22XE. It produced 125 horsepower, 134 foot-pounds of torque. Both these cams are very similar. The difference is where the torque starts to come in from one to the other. All right, now we're showing the Fueling 472. It produced 124 horsepower, 133 foot-pounds of torque. And up next is the Zippers Redshift 472. It produced 122 horsepower and 133 foot-pounds of torque. You'll notice the torque comes in pretty quick down there between 2,000 and 3,000 RPMs. Okay, coming up here we have the Andrews 465. It produced 121 horsepower and 134 foot-pounds of torque. Up next is the Star 3030. We hear a lot of people talk about this cam. Horsepower 125 and torque at 135. All right, Competition Cams makes a cam called a 234. It produced 127 horsepower and 131 foot-pounds of torque. Okay, now we have the Cyclorama cam, which is our shop favorite cam to use. This one is the CR480 MT. It produced 120 horsepower and 139 foot-pounds of torque. This particular cam produced the most torque of any cam in the test. So the torque number, if you're looking for torque, the CR480 MT is going to be your choice. Another cam from Cyclorama is the CR483. It produced 122 horsepower and 136 in torque. Both these cams are big torque cams. Okay, up next is another Woods cam. This is the 777XE. It produced the most horsepower of all the cams in this test at 130 horsepower. The torque is at 126, so there's a trade-off. You guys watch out for that. Okay, this one is another cam, the third one in the test from Cyclorama. It's the CR485. It produced 128 horsepower and 129 foot-pounds of torque. Good all-around cam. On to the last two cams of this test. This one is the S&S 475. It produced 126 horsepower and 135 foot-pounds of torque. And the last cam in this test is the Andrews 485. It produced 127 horsepower and 133 foot-pounds of torque. This one is going to be a choice for the guy that wants the best of both worlds. You can't have max of each. You can have a medium level of both. And the Andrews cam does a real good job at that. Okay, so one thing I did want everybody to try to notice is, if you'll notice how when all of these dyno runs are laid on top of one another, there are some differences, but there's nothing really major between any of them. Some of them offer great torque down low. Some of them offer great horsepower up high, but you can't have both. You can't have both in one cam. I've always been a torque guy. I like my torque to come in real low. Horsepower to me, if you're a racer, drag racer guy, and you like to ride wide open, you know, that's where you're going to have the power way wide up high on the RPM range. Just depends on who you are and what you want. But I just want you to notice in this graph that all this talk about how this particular cam is so much better than this particular cam, you know, it's really not. They're all about the same. It just depends on who you like. If you're a football fan, you like the Dallas Cowboys. Some people like the Denver Broncos. Some people like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're all football teams. They all play football. So just pick the one that fits your particular need. Most people need torque down low. Most people don't ride wide open. So after all that boils down to the best torque number in this test was the Cyclorama CR480 MT at 139 foot-pounds of torque on this 117 test. Okay, and the best horsepower overall out of all 13 cams was the Woods 777XE at 130 horsepower. So if you're looking for the most horsepower you can find for your 117 or 114 or 107, the Woods 777 cam is going to give you the most horsepower. Some people want horsepower, some people want torque. Okay, so from this particular test, we can take something away from it. If you want high horsepower, you get low torque. If you want high torque, you get low horsepower. Depends on what you want. If you want a good all-around cam, there's good choices. Actually, there's two of them. the Woods 22XD and the Andrews 485. Both those cams are about identical at 127 horsepower. The Woods 22XD is 134 torque. The Andrews is 133 torque. Tit for tat. And that's going to do it for this particular video and this cam test and explanation on how engines are designed and what to expect with the cam and all that kind of stuff. I appreciate you guys watching. We're here if you have any questions. Be glad to help you in any way we can. If you like the video, great. If you would like and subscribe, we appreciate it. And I'm Steve Carr, and we'll talk to you later.